A show created by the fans, for the fans. We are your home for Ohio State football coverage all year long. The Scarlet and Gray Podcast, a Network 216 production. Live weekdays on the Network 216 YouTube channel. Send us all your questions and comments on Twitter at @VSG_podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Tyler Johnson, Jordan Dalton, and Nick Leisure.
Good evening, Buckeye Nation, and welcome to tonight's episode of the Scarlet and Gray Podcast. I am Tyler Johnson, joined by Mr. Jordan Dalton. JD, how are you doing this evening, my man?
Not too bad. I just want to boast a little bit that my prediction of Ohio State's first Big Ten shutout in almost 6 years was correct. And we were able to get it done and hang a 0 on the board with some luck and some help from the Purdue kicker missing a couple field goals there. But other than that, yeah, I'm doing well. We're going to talk some Ohio State football.
Absolutely. Love to hear it, man. There is not really a ton to talk about with this game, but we will dig into it. We'll recap this weekend from college football and, of course, give our picks for the week. But before we get into any of that, guys, if you would just, as always, take a quick second, drop a like on the video if you would. Again, completely free to like that video. It helps push the show out to people that have not yet seen the Scarlet and Gray podcast. But also subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. That way you don't miss any Ohio State football content that we have. 2 episodes per week. You want to make sure you don't miss it. And then, of course, the show is available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you can't tune in live, just know you can always tune in on anywhere that you get your podcast. So, JD, Ohio State, you kind of hit it already. Did post their first shutout since 2017. Beat Purdue 45-0 on Saturday at the Shoe. I mean, what were some of your takeaways from this game? I think, honestly, it was just I didn't think Purdue. I knew they were 1-8, but I guess I just didn't realize they were this bad. Like, they're 1-8, but they had put up some points the last couple weeks. So, what were some of your takeaways just from this game?
Yeah, a big thing coming into the game was the run game of Purdue, and they were pretty effective early on running the ball in this game, but once we were able to slow them down, they really didn't have any other dimensions to their offense. I think they ended up finishing with every single receiver was under 30 yards receiving. They only had 2 receivers that had 2 catches, and then everyone else had 1 single catch. Hudson Carr, their quarterback, threw for 108. So they were kind of struggling offensively, and it just seemed like once the game got going that they just couldn't compete with the talent of Ohio State. And we see that a lot with these lower tier teams. It's once the game kind of settles down, we get the lead and run away with it in the end. So I was kind of with you there. I thought there was going to be a little bit more offensive juice per se, but they just didn't. They weren't able to get anything going. I think Maccabee, is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah, he's a tough guy, tough running back. Probably one of the better running backs in the Big Ten, but just struggle. It's really hard to get a run game going when you can't do anything else offensively.
Well, and I think too with this, and they really did. I mean, I know for the game it says they averaged 2.6 yards a carry. Maccabee actually played pretty. I mean, I know he broke off a couple runs. I thought he played pretty well, and it seemed like, now I understand why you get away from it, but he was actually playing pretty well for him. So even though they were losing, I'm kind of surprised they still didn't give him more than 13 carries in this game, because he seemed to be the only guy on their offense that could actually move the ball. So that was kind of a surprise for me. Hudson Card, we talked about it on the game day preview. He's not very good. I mean, he's really not. Ryan Brown gives them a little bit more in the run game, even though he didn't do anything against us on the ground. I feel like he would have given them another dimension because, again, the one thing Ohio State struggled with this year is mobile quarterbacks. Hudson Card is he's just not very good, of course. And Purdue, it's hard to see if they even win another football game this year. But one of the things that was really a takeaway for me is I also mentioned this on the preview show. I want to see a game where Will Howard didn't turn the ball over, and he did not turn the ball over. I mean, he was 21-26, 260 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had one on the ground because he ran the ball 9 times for 7 yards. Now, again, he was also sacked a couple times, so like it is what it is. But at the end of the day, I thought Will Howard played really well. I think what I also like seeing the 10 yards per attempt is very encouraging because again, he does throw the ball. He does throw the ball short a lot of times, but he also does move the ball down the field a lot more than he's given credit for. Again, still struggling with the deep ball. But you know what? At the end of the day, if we keep winning games, that's really all that matters. What were your thoughts on Will Howard's performance on Saturday?
Yeah, I thought he played well. Played within the offense. I think that's kind of his biggest strength, honestly, is he's playing within the system. He doesn't force a whole lot, and he's able to make the throws to the guys that are open. And in the Penn State game, he had a couple misses, but this game against Purdue, it seemed like every throw he was on target, and he was able to get the ball to his playmakers. You saw J.J. Smith got a touchdown, Ibuka, Carnell Tate got involved. All around, it was just a really solid game from Will Howard. And honestly, I'm surprised. I feel like if we would have beat Oregon in that game early on, that he'd have more consideration for a Heisman right now. And if you look at his stats compared to Dylan Gabriel, I know this was kind of floating around on the internet this week. They're almost identical in every single category. And the only thing was total yardage, and that's because Dylan Gabriel's played another game. And I don't think have they had their bye week yet? Is that why?
I don't let me look. I can look it up real quick, but the whole thing with I'm kind of glad you brought that up because it was something I wanted to discuss as well. The whole thing is weird. I don't know. I mean, Oregon, I guess, has their bye after this week, it looks like. Okay. So, because then they play they're at Wisconsin, and then they're at home against Washington on the 30th. So, I mean, well, I guess we'll see. I mean, Nick brings up a good point here. Also, Nick is at Disney, so yeah, that's why he's not on tonight, for those wondering. They ran the ball pretty well early, but can never get going. Yeah, that's pretty much true. But I'm glad you brought up the whole Will Howard versus Dylan Gabriel thing. Where do you stand on that? Because I personally, this is where I'm at. I don't think Dylan Gabriel I don't think he should win the Heisman. I'll just say that. I understand Oregon's number one. I think what Travis Hunter's doing at Colorado is just absolutely insane. And the fact that they're actually good, he needs to be in the conversation. Gene T is doing something we haven't seen since Barry Sanders. And of course, Cam Ward will be in it still, even though Miami lost. The whole Dylan Gabriel versus Will Howard thing's weird to me because I just don't understand how you look at this and say Dylan Gabriel is in the picture for the Heisman and Will Howard isn't. I know it's a yardage thing, but the stats are completely identical.
And it would be Will Howard has one more game under his belt, and they're pretty much identical in every single category. So it's and I think after this Northwestern game, you could almost count on them being identical. And who knows if Oregon gets that bye week, we're probably looking at Will Howard has a couple more touchdowns than Dylan Gabriel at that point. So I don't know. I don't think it's a popularity contest at the end of the day, the Heisman. Unless you have a runaway favorite, which we don't really seem to have one this year. But in years past, you're looking at there's an obvious best player, and that player is usually a quarterback, and we really don't have that this year. We have a lot of position. We might have our first defensive player, not primarily defense, but defensive player in Travis Hunter winning it. In the last 20 years, we haven't really had a guy that played both sides of the ball that won the Heisman. I think the last one was Desmond Howard. So, Yeah, I just think the Heisman conversation is kind of silly for Dylan Gabriel. I understand that team's undefeated, but there's still a lot of factors that play into it. He's really not pushing the ball downfield. Like the whole thing was like, oh, like Dylan Gabriel's pushing the ball downfield more than Will Howard. He has a better deep ball. But then you look at their yards per attempt and Will Howard's higher somehow. I don't get that argument. So
I don't either, man. The whole thing is weird to me. Like that whole thing is weird. And you bring up the Heisman again. I think for me, we'll do our Heisman rankings at some point. I feel like that'd be something fun to do. But for me, I feel like it's a 2-horse race at the moment because you have Hunter and you have Gene T. Cam Ward for me is out personally. I just don't like. I don't think Miami's situation, especially now. I think he's gone. But what Hunter is doing at Colorado, we have not seen anything like this. I mean, he's literally the Shiani Otani of college football. Like it's incredible. Colorado's good, and then Gene T. If Gene T leads them to the college football playoff, to me, I think it's a no-brainer. It's him because he's also doing something we haven't seen, and just the dude's just taking 35 carries a game and just wearing people out. Like it's just incredible. It really is. Like there's no Caleb Williams in this. Like a guy that's just completely shredding everybody and winning a Heisman that way. So, the other thing I did kind of notice too, just from the game, I don't know if you took away this as well. Were you a little bit surprised by the lack of involvement that Emeka Egbuka had in this game?
Not really. I think they do a really good job of mixing up the wide receiver, especially now that we're later in the season. They did get Egbuka involved. They did get him a touchdown.
Yeah.
But Carnell Tate definitely stepped up in this game. It's just I just feel like it's so hard to get everybody the ball in the football game.
It is
with this offense and how many players that we have. Like, I mean, you get G. Scott involved, and you're already looking at like 6 players that have touches and are making an impact. So, I feel like this offense is definitely like who's gonna explode, who's gonna have that big game, and it's really just up to how the game ends up going. And so not super surprised that Emeka didn't get involved as much in this football game.
So Jermaine asks us any thoughts on CJ Hicks' comments saying that he wants to be edge rusher is what he is saying, but he had a colorful way of putting that he should be an edge rusher. Any thoughts on CJ Hicks? Dude, I'll be honest. I'm kind of over the CJ Hicks experiment. Like, clearly, it just hasn't worked out. He's been passed up on the depth chart multiple times. Like, I understand he says he wants to be an edge rusher. If this is the case, like, why is it his junior year and we're talking about this? Like, I don't know. He's a 5-star. So, like, if the Buckeyes want to get the best out of him, I don't know why they'd be keeping him at linebacker if this is indeed the situation. I don't know. The whole thing with CJ Hicks is weird to me because this is a guy that came in one of the highest overall recruits. And if he was a linebacker, like if they recruited him as a linebacker and then after 1 year, they clearly knew he wasn't that great because he wasn't even getting reps really as a freshman. So why didn't they move him? And now CJ Hicks is saying he needs to be an edge rusher. So I don't know, man. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we had hopes for him this year to kind of make an impact in that linebacker room. They moved Sonny Styles down from safety. We lost Eichenberg to the draft. We lost running back convert. Who am I thinking of? Steel Chambers. So we lost Eichenberg and Steel Chambers last year. So really it was Cody Simon and Sonny Styles. And we saw the opportunity for CJ Hicks to kind of step into that room and make an impact, being a high prospect, 5-star recruit. And we just really haven't seen any of the intangibles that you need to be a good linebacker other than he is a pretty good pass rusher. And we kind of made a comment early on, I think it was preseason, one of our preseason shows, we kind of talked about how we would like to see him more as like that jack position that Jim Knowles used in his prior seasons, and they kind of got away from the jack position. And I think he would be a really good jack for this defense, moving him around on the line, stand up edge. But we really have gotten away from that this year. And I just don't think there's a role for him on the defense with how Jim Knowles and Ryan Day kind of want that defense to be run. And who knows with what Larry Johnson thinks and how they rotate their defensive linemen. I mean, that's been the last 2 weeks they brought it up. And I think we'll get into this as well. The Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson, Big Noon Kickoff. I mean, we're getting all we can handle with Big Noon Kickoff every week. But
yeah.
But Joel Klatt brought up a really good point that in the last couple of weeks, after there had been some frustrations aired publicly about the rotation of the defense and some of these players and their snap counts, that there was actually a little bit more rotation of those players. We're seeing a little bit more of Caden Curry. We're seeing a little bit more of Edric Houston. So who knows, man? I just don't think there's a role for CJ Hicks in this defense right now.
You know what's weird, dude, is because I'm glad you brought up the jack. Funny enough, they actually used it on Saturday. Ryan Day said today, it sounds like, I don't know if you got to hear, I only caught pieces of it, that the jack will be used, it sounds like, going forward. So whether that's CJ, I don't know. It looks like Mitchell Milton was the one that they were giving the reps to until he ended up getting hurt in this game. But it is something to keep an eye on, I think, because you start using the jack position, it's going to open up a pathway, especially on the recruiting side of things. I already have a couple guys in mind that could potentially fill that void, including a hometown kid here, so that's currently committed to Alabama. So we'll see what happens there with Justin Hill. But I just don't know about Hicks. Like, I understand now, if they are going to use the jack, if they aren't even going to use CJ Hicks at the jack moving forward, I think they're just kind of done with that experiment, is what that kind of tells me. I've already said this too. It's not an indictment on Hicks, I don't think, but the reality is we don't know the true story there. I think he's gone after this year either way. Like, I think he's transferring. It makes like, if they're not going to use him properly or whatever the case may be, because, again, we don't know, he's probably just going to leave, and he should, because if he's not going to get consistent playing time here, go somewhere, maybe Cincinnati, that's going to give you that playing time. Like, it's an unfortunate situation for sure, because I feel like this guy's really talented, and either it was a mistake on Hicks, a mistake on the coaching staff, maybe a combination of both that just didn't work out. It's just wild to me. It really is. And I'm glad you brought up Caden Curry. He's been getting good rotation snaps in. Edric Houston actually started this game. I thought that was interesting.
Yep.
Because he started in play, for those in the chat that aren't aware. I mean, I'm sure everyone's aware, but good to just cover it again. He did start in place of Tyleek Williams, so they started him at defensive tackle, which was very surprising because I don't see him as that, but sounds like that's what he's going to play moving forward. So there's a lot of talent, man, and like we've talked about it, I feel like, on a number of shows. Rotate that talent. There's no reason JT and Jack need to play every snap. There just isn't. Because when you get to the end of the year, these guys are going to be gassed. Like, there's no reason for that. So I think moving forward, you keep that rotation going. It's only going to be beneficial. And you know what else that does? That keeps these guys in the program. Some of these guys, they get snaps this year, they're probably not going to transfer because they see that we have a future here. So exactly. I think that's encouraging. Especially seeing it in the secondary too. They've been doing a lot more of that. I've noticed that in the second, ever since the Oregon game, I've seen a lot more rotation. So that is really encouraging to see. Nick adds on CJ Hicks, missed out on a sack in the game Saturday, had a clear rush and just missed it. Yeah. And I feel like that's kind of the story of his career. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've seen guys get less playing time than CJ Hicks, like throughout CJ Hicks' career, and still make more plays than he has. It's also just, he just hasn't been very lucky to this point. So, that's something we'll monitor moving forward. And then the final thing, JD, just kind of to talk about here. Did it seem like to you that TreVeyon Henderson had more than 6 carries in this game?
Yeah, I mean, he made some big plays. it's just like this team is so talented with their players, and I don't know, man. It's yeah,
I was surprised.
I'm not surprised. I just they do such a good job at splitting carries between him and Judkins and getting them both involved. And there was one play, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened on the play. It ended up being a loss, but they had Judkins in the backfield, Travion split out to the left, and then they brought Travion in motion. They tried some reverse, and then I think it got stuffed. But I was like, I like the creativity trying to get them on the field together and get them the ball.
Mm-hmm. It sets it up because I think I know I think you're talking about the play also where Quinshawn came in motion, Will fake pitched it to him and handed it off to Travion. Like there's so much potential they can do off of that, and we haven't seen any of it yet. I don't think. So I was more so surprised because it's like I looked at the box score and I said, and Travion Henderson had 6 carries. I'm looking at myself like, what? Like that doesn't seem accurate, and it was.
What do you know what his yardage was?
Yeah, it's total yards in this game. He ended up having 85 yards on 6 carries.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, he balled out.
I was gonna say I thought he ripped off a couple good runs.
So, yeah, I mean, it was just definitely a surprise to me. I think on the we'll talk defense real quick. I mean, bottom line is they dominated, and ever since Oregon, this defense has looked completely different. Been a lot really physical, I'll say that, which is good to see. They've mixed up a lot of looks, which, let's be honest, we've been waiting for them to do that. You can't be predictable. You can't. And I feel like they're finally doing that. Is there anything you wanted to add on the defense? I mean, the bottom line is they've been the best defense in the country ever since the Oregon game.
Yeah, I think they did have a couple opportunities to give up some points. They really bowed and stood their ground, which is what you like to see. I think they had the big goal line stop against Penn State. They had a goal line stop against Purdue. Purdue just went ahead and missed that 20-yard field goal or whatever, but really doing us a favor to get the shutout. And yeah, they played a really solid game overall, keeping them out of the end zone. And shout out to Caden Curry blocking that punt early and really setting the tone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was awesome to see, by the way, the fact that we just made a play on special teams that actually benefited us. It seems like every time special teams something happens, it seems like. So it's nice to see something went in our favor. Okay, I kind of wanted to move on here and just talk about what is going on with the scheduling. Ohio State will play 6 big noon kickoff games in a row. What are your thoughts on all this? I saw what Joe Klatt said. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I have an opinion on this. So I haven't really read into the broadcasting rights situation and why Ohio State's getting stuck with all these Big Ten or big noon kickoff games. Because I know each network kind of has their own disbursement of games that they can choose from. And it seems that Big Noon Kickoff has kind of targeted Ohio State as the team that they're going to go ahead and use to boost their ratings every week. And Joel Klatt fired back at a bunch of angry Ohio State fans this week saying that Big Noon Kickoff is Fox's most successful window. They're averaging 7 million viewers a week. My rebuttal to that is the reason you're averaging 7 million views a week is because you have a bunch of Ohio State fans with their fan base of almost 12 million fans watching their team play at noon every week.
Exactly.
And it's averaging out. It's making your window seem more successful than it's overinflating your numbers is what it is.
Facts.
And so I just think it's hilarious. Like the biggest game of the year last weekend was Penn State, Ohio State. Biggest game of in the Big Ten at least. And it was top 5 matchup, biggest game since Oregon, Ohio State, for Ohio State fans. And It was a noon game. And then we're looking at another potential top 5 matchup next weekend against Indiana. And same situation. They snagged it for big noon kickoff. We just call it Big Ten noon kickoff because that's what it ends up being every week. And then we're gonna be stuck on big noon kickoff again for the Michigan game. And so it's like the final 6 weeks of the season. So it's big noon kickoff this weekend as well for Northwestern. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how they keep getting the rights to these games, but I need to figure it out because it's kind of insane. Like, why can't we get a night game for the Indiana game, or why couldn't we get a whiteout for the Penn State game?
What's so weird, dude, is like they're not even sending their game. I call it their game day crew because that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like their pregame show is at Colorado this week. Colorado and Utah. They were at Texas Tech last week for Colorado and Texas Tech. Like they're going not to the biggest game, it feels like. They're going where the money is. And the reason I have such an issue with this is this hurts Ohio State from a recruiting standpoint because recruits, man, want night games. Recruits want to be in the spotlight, okay? And it's not that noon isn't. Let me just say that. Your environments are better at night. They are, okay? Like, it's more intense. It's just the environment at the shoe at night is not the same as the environment at the shoe at noon, okay? Let's just get that out of the way quickly. You are completely right. The only reason they're making this money is because it's Ohio State. They're not putting Michigan on big noon kickoff outside of one game, which was against Texas basically. Yeah. Like, Ohio State and Indiana should 100% be a night game, and it would be honestly, that's the game of the week. Here in 2 weeks. So next week, my bad. It's gotten to the point where it's getting ridiculous, and Joe Klatt can say whatever he wants. They're tired of Ohio State games. Gus Johnson's call was absolutely pathetic in the second half. Now I understand Ohio State was up big, but Chris Fowler's done Ohio State games where Ohio State was up by 42, scores a touchdown to JSN, and he's still whooping and hollering like it's a close game. Like, dude, they don't want them. We don't want them here anymore. Like, we want night games. And Joel Klatt said, oh, well, this is the deal the Big Ten signed up for. The Big Ten didn't sign up for you to put Ohio State at noon every single week. I guarantee you the Big Ten probably isn't very thrilled that one of their number one moneymakers, like for the conference, is playing at 12 every week. Yeah. I guarantee you they're not very thrilled about that.
So do you know, do they get a choice of what Big Ten game goes on big noon kickoff? And they're just choosing Ohio State, essentially.
Because even though they have a deal with CBS, like the Big Ten has that deal with Fox, CBS, and NBC. Well, NBC and Peacock, technically. You have to have one Peacock game, I believe, every Big Ten team does. I think that's part of the deal. But Ohio State's been on NBC once this year, I think. Maybe once. You've been on CBS twice, and it's been crappy games. Like, so CBS, and just to be honest, I'm not a fan of Brad Nessler, and, like, I think those guys need to retire. I'm just kind of old and kind of tired of them. But anyway, those guys CBS isn't getting good games from this for the most part. I mean, they're really not. So they did get Indiana and Michigan, but I mean, let's be honest, that wasn't a great game from a ranking standpoint. Fox is just taking Ohio State and just putting them at 12 o'clock every time. And they're like, well, we can't do Oregon. I mean, that might be technically true, but, like, I don't know, man. It's just, the whole thing has just gotten to where it's ridiculous. And I get what Klatt's saying, but he's saying, let's be honest, he's saying it on behalf of Fox. Like, there's no way he agrees with it. There's no way. Because deep down, he probably thinks, like, okay, Ohio State and Indiana, that should not be a noon kickoff. Like, let's be real. It shouldn't be. Yeah. I think he knows that deep down.
I think what the Big Ten needs to do come this offseason, if the Big Ten really wants to save face on this issue with Ohio State fans, and probably Big Ten fans in general, is they need to come out and be like, hey, you need to limit the amount of games that each team can play in each time slot, because Ohio State at noon, like you said, it not only is going to kill, like prime time is where the real money is for the conference.
Facts.
And Ohio State is the biggest driver of views. So you need to have primetime games with Ohio State. Like one primetime game against Oregon is not going to cut it. And I'm just saying that as like a Big Ten official. Like they have to be sitting there like, you have to be kidding me. Like, why are we sending our biggest moneymaker out on noon every single week when they're playing in really, big games? Like the Ohio State Michigan game, I get, like, we play that at noon every year. That's a noon game. Historically, it's going to probably stay that way forever.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
like you should be able to flex nobody expected Indiana to be good this year, and they're going to be a top 5 team. Like you should be able to flex that to a primetime slot. And even if it's a primetime slot on Fox, like get Gus and Joel out there to call a primetime night game,
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't understand why we're stuck on this big noon kickoff thing. 'Cause frankly, it's kind of old now. Like we need to get something different going on. And I get it.
People are tired of it, man. People are tired of it.
If it's Northwestern, like sure, like throw them on at noon, but like, come on. Like we've had 2 night games this year, Oregon and Central Michigan or Western Michigan.
Western Michigan was at home. Oregon was on the road. Like other than that, we don't have one big home night game this year.
And we might if we end up in the first round of the playoffs. But if we end up getting a first round bye, like there goes another home game that we could potentially have at night.
Yeah.
So
it hurts you. I'm telling you, it kind of hurts you on the recruiting trail too.
Dude, I didn't even think about that though. That's so true. Like kids want to go and be under the lights. Like football is meant to be played Friday night lights and like,
yep.
And that's when like the stars come out. Like the biggest moments in college football history are under the lights. And it's just, it's really disappointing, I think, for having these big matchups. Like, and like I said, like if we're playing Purdue, if we're playing Michigan State or at Illinois, like an unranked Big Ten team, like sure, throw it on at noon, get your money, get your views. But these big games need to be on prime time.
I agree, man. And even like, and I know it would like, I'm not a fan of like Friday night games or Thursday night, like by any means, but man, I mean, even give us one of those so we can have a night game. I mean, it's just, it's just ridiculous. And Kevin, appreciate the kind words, my friend. Go Bucks. Yeah. Glad you said beat the Cats. We'll have our Ohio State versus Northwestern game day preview for you guys on Friday. So make sure, you are subscribed and tuned in for that. But JD, kind of real quick, because I feel like we could have an entire show on this. Maybe we will in the off season. It'll be interesting to analyze. But I figured before we do our picks, anything stand out to you from last weekend, going around, just looking at the game from last weekend? I think for me, pretty obvious. I do not want to play Alabama in the first round. Because I think Jalen Milroe is the type of guy that, knowing how we struggle against mobile quarterbacks, I don't like our odds against Jalen Milroe personally in a first-round matchup. So, but other than that, any of your takeaways just from this past weekend?
We kind of touched on it on our picks last week. We were just talking about Miami. We're like, Miami's got to lose at some point, right?
Yep.
And sure enough, they ended up losing this week. Georgia Tech is a tough football team, and they really played Miami well in Miami, right? Or was it at Georgia Tech?
It was at Georgia Tech. But if you like, I watched some of it, like, because I would like Ohio State was on halftime. I flipped back. Ohio State actually ended early, and then I caught the rest of the Miami game. It sounded like there were a lot of Miami fans there, though, just judging by the crowd. So it was an away game, but I mean, let's be real. I don't know how much of a true away game it was.
Yeah, Cam Ward, he does some really impressive things on the football field. And then other times you just shake your head at some of the decisions that guy makes on the football field. So, I think that was kind of my biggest takeaway. Georgia did not look good against Ole Miss. Ole Miss played them really well, and Beck threw a lot of bad throws, and it was rough. So
yeah,
Georgia might be first one out this year. We'll see, and we got the rankings coming out here in an hour. We'll see where everybody sits. Georgia's got a matchup with Tennessee this week, and one of those teams is probably going to be out depending on the results.
No Nico for Tennessee.
And
so
if Georgia loses that game, you can probably count them out for the playoff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Doug's asking, who would they use to spy on Milroe? I mean, I don't know if it would really matter. Maybe Caleb Downs. I mean that because, and normally you don't want to do that with a safety, but Milroe is not your – Milroe's the closest thing we've seen to Lamar Jackson. I don't know. That's a good question, Doug. That's a good question. If we get to that, we'll break that down a lot more. He said also too much freelancer from Cam Ward. Yeah, that's the problem, and that's why he's not a Buckeye. Ryan Day is not about that. Does Beck have video of Kirby Smart? I don't know if they have a backup that's Jaden Rashada. I know they brought him in from Arizona, transfer from Arizona State. I don't think he's good enough, and that's probably why they're not making a change.
They lost Vandergrift to Kentucky.
Yeah, so they're kind of just stuck there. But one thing I noticed, JD, is just LSU, once again, the expectations that they're going to be really good and continuously under-deliver there. I think that's kind of a big deal. Garrett Nussmeier, I know, draft circles people were talking about. I know Dane Brugler was on him as his top quarterback in this class. He needs to go back to school. That man's clearly not ready for the NFL. And also, once again, Colorado continuously has me eating crow. They are playing great. I've watched them now a couple times of course, to watch Shador. But I'm telling you, that team, they got talent all over the offensive side of the ball. Their offensive line looks good, it's just what Coach Prime is doing there. He's showing that he does, as crazy as this sounds, he does not have to recruit to field a team that could potentially win a conference championship. He has gone and made an entire new team in the portal, and they very well can make the college football playoff. They right now are in the driver's seat. It's incredible. It really is. What he's doing is incredible. I don't know if he stays past this year. Does he go to Florida State? They fire Mike Norvell. Does he go to Dallas? Does he go coach the Cowboys, which I'm telling people I wouldn't rule that one out. What they're doing at Colorado is absolutely incredible. And then the final just takeaway in general is just overall, when you look around the country, it's such an open race, it seems like, continuously. The Big Ten, we don't know who, we know the teams are probably going to be in the playoff, but we don't know who's going to win this conference. The ACC, honestly, we still don't know who's going to win this conference. I mean, because Clemson only has one loss. Maybe two losses, my bad. SMU's there. The 12 team is just going to be so much fun. And I'll give Indiana credit. Michigan is not good, but one thing they do have is a defense. And Indiana still found a way, setting up for what's going to be a very fun game here in 2 weeks. But, yeah. I just think overall, man, it just seems like there's a lot of parity in college football this year, don't you think?
Yeah, and that was something it kind of bothered me coming into this NIL era where people were saying that there was going to be a lot of lopsidedness in college football. These teams that are paying their players more, Ohio State's got 20 million in their program. Oregon's got unlimited money from the Nike fund, all these things. We're seeing probably the best college football we've ever seen. Just in terms of we're not seeing total domination from a lot of these teams. It's it's been Alabama's having a down year. Georgia's having a down year. Clemson's not a powerhouse anymore. Notre Dame is struggling. Teams that were expected to have really good years this year just because of how much money they're putting into their teams. Ohio State's really showed some lumps. Oregon's not invincible by any stretch of the imagination.
Nope. No.
Like Oregon got a few games this year. They've been really tight with teams that are really under talented compared to them. So yeah, I totally agree. I think the parity's up, and I think this 12-team playoff, like anything can happen. And like the fact that we're staring down an Indiana undefeated 11-0 matchup against Ohio State, like who would have thought? Like seriously, like who would have thought?
For real, man.
Would be this good this year.
It's incredible. It really is. And I mean, going back to Clemson, I do agree with you. They're definitely not the same program. Dabo is going to have to change his philosophy in the transfer portal if
They're
they are
still
going.
good, though. They're still a good team.
Just not a powerhouse. Like
not a powerhouse. Yes.
So, but I'm saying, like, for Clemson to get back there, Dabo's just going to have to use the portal, which so far he has been kind of he's criticized the portal, but maybe you need to just accept the fact it's the era of college football we live in. But anyway, how did you do last week with your picks?
Actually, best week I've had in a while. I think I only had 2 losses. So
you only had 2 losses last week?
Yeah. I picked Vanderbilt and Miami, and they both let me down. But otherwise, I got the Ole Miss pick right. I got the Indiana, Colorado, Bama. I got UL and BYU all winning. So
nice. Yep. Last week I went 5-3, so got a good streak going. Well, of just winning weeks, luckily. But I said that, and what'll happen, that'll change. Huh?
Claw my way back to 500.
What's your current record at right now?
34-37.
Oh, dude, yeah, you can easily get there this week.
Yes, sir.
So Nick went 6-2, is what he told me that last week, like on I want to say Sunday. He told me that. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, he went 6-2. So right now he is 49-23. I am 48-24. So neck and neck right there. Okay, we'll see if he joins us. If not, we'll get his picks later. Like I said, I didn't think he'd join, but anyway, okay. Let's start off with some action. Actually, one of the best games in the MAC this week, and this isn't biased. It's actually 2 teams that have winning records in the MAC. Eastern Michigan is at OU.
Oh,
7:00 tomorrow night.
What's the spread on that one, TJ?
OU is favored by 11 points.
And it's at OU?
It is at OU.
Yeah, give me the Athens assholes on that one.
I am going with EMU. I'm going with Eastern Michigan. They probably will lose. I mean, when the spread's that high in a MAC game, I kind of know where this is going. Like, let's be real. If it was at EMU, maybe I'd feel like they could pull off the upset here. But I'm just gonna go with EMU. I have to go with my dynasty team in college football 25 and hoping they can pull out a victory here. Okay,
that's good.
Now we can get to the fun, the game, the teams that we know more about. I'll say it that way. Okay. So starting off, this is a great 12 o'clock kickoff. Obviously, probably won't watch a ton of it, but it should be a good game. 23rd ranked Clemson at 18th ranked Pittsburgh.
Ooh. The last time I picked Pitt, they lost. They're coming off of 2 straight losses against SMU and Virginia. Biggest win this year was probably against Syracuse. They won 41-13.
Mm-hmm.
Give me Clemson in this game. I think Clemson.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, Clemson, like, both teams have 2 losses in the ACC here. I mean, Clemson's coming off a win at Virginia Tech. They won by 10, but I'm going to go with, man, I don't know. I don't feel confident really in either team here. One thing I know that Pittsburgh is really good at is the defensive side of the ball. They really mix it up a lot on defense, and Cabe Klubnik really struggled against Louisville when Louisville is running a lot of the same things that Pitt is going to do. So I'm going to go Pittsburgh in this game. Not super confident in it, but the fact that they're at home in this game, I think, does help. Okay, let's see. Who isn't? All right, JD. Tulane at Navy.
Undefeated Navy. No,
Navy
wait. Army's undefeated.
Correct. Navy is 7-2, and Tulane. And Tulane actually, I believe, is, I want to say 8. Let me see real quick. Make sure I have their records correct. And Tulane is 8-2.
Okay, so an 8-2 and 7-2 matchup. It's at Navy. The line is 7 for Tulane. I'm gonna roll with the Navy on this one.
I'm going Navy as well. I think it's very difficult for some of these teams to defend a triple option. These mid-major schools, I really do. And I know that Navy lost to Rice. I think that was a fluke. Personally, I think that was a fluke. Also, Doug, no, the Pittsburgh Clemson is at 12. So when Ohio State plays Northwestern.
Okay.
Anyway, I like Navy in this game as well. I know Tulane can put up the points. That it also is why they're favored, but I think Navy will bounce back at home in a big way. I don't think they're going to crush it by any means, but I am confident that they pull off the victory. All right, who we got next? Okay. A team that's still not ranked, kind of surprisingly, but 24 ranked Missouri at South Carolina for a 4:15 kickoff. I'm very surprised that South Carolina is not ranked now. Because they're coming off another ranked win on the road.
Yeah, I'm riding the USC train. U of SC, University of South Carolina. Let's go Cox.
Yep. I got South Carolina in this game too. Again, man, they have a lot of momentum. They beat Texas A&M at home. They go on the road and beat Vanderbilt. Now everyone can say, "Oh, Vanderbilt was ranked." I just don't understand. I'll be honest, I don't really understand why they're not ranked at this point. I mean, I know they have 3 losses, but there are other teams at college football that got 3 losses that are ranked. Maybe they'll be. To be fair, the polls haven't come out for this week, so yeah, we'll see. I think they deserve to be ranked, but we'll see what the committee thinks about that. Okay, Arizona State at 19th ranked Kansas State. Arizona State is 7-2 and 3rd in the Big 12. Kansas State is 7-2 and also 4-2 in the Big 12.
Arizona State is pretty sneaky good this year. Like you said, not ranked. They've beaten number 16 Utah. They have beaten Oklahoma State pretty bad, and they're coming off a win against UCF. It's a good matchup. Kansas. This is pretty much a matchup to decide. This is going to be another matchup that's a factor in the Big 12 championship and who ends up getting in. The loss to Houston for Kansas State is really big. I don't think they're going to bounce back well, and I think Arizona State's going to take it.
Okay. All right. Well, as the great Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. I got Kansas State in this game. I do think they bounce back. One thing about Kansas State, they are very tough to beat at home. This is a home game at a 7:00 kickoff, Manhattan, Kansas. I just think it's going to be tough to beat them at home. Arizona State has played well this year. They really have. Kansas State is just different. They play more intensity, it seems like, at home. I think they win this game and they get back in contention for the Big 12 title. I know they need help from Colorado and BYU to do so, but yeah, I like Kansas State in this game. Like I said, if they were on the road, I think I would go Arizona State, but because they're at home, I'm gonna roll with the Cats.
Okay.
All right. Well, this changes my pick after hearing that Nico will be out on Saturday. Number 7, Tennessee at 3rd ranked Georgia, 7:30 kickoff.
Yeah, I got Georgia in this game.
I do too. Beck hasn't played well, but I don't know how Tennessee overcomes not having the quarterback on the road in this game. But I just don't like. Maybe they find a way to win, and I'll say this: if they do find a way to win this game, I think they punch their ticket to the playoff. If Tennessee wins this game, I really do. I think that for me does it. We'll see. But Georgia, I don't think Georgia's losing this game. If they were on the road, it'd be a different story because I think Neyland Stadium's one of the best environments in college football. Georgia's not. Kirby Smart's not going to let them lose this game. I just feel like it's not going to happen. I think Beck will play better than he has. That doesn't mean he's going to play great, but I think he'll play better than he has. And yeah, we're going with Georgia. Not very confident about it, but with Nico being out, with the team that still has their starting quarterback.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to for me. Okay. Wake Forest at North Carolina. So Wake Forest, I figured this would be a nice, fun, like different game to do. Wake Forest 4-5, and North Carolina is 5-4. Both teams are at the very bottom of the ACC, both at 2-3.
Yeah, I thought North Carolina was going to be solid this year. They have just had a lot of injuries and quarterback changes, and they just have not played well. I'm just going to roll with Wake Forest here. They don't get chosen a lot, so I'm going to do them a solid and pick them.
Respect. Another one we're going to differ on. So, yeah, North Carolina losing their quarterback at the beginning of the year, that's terrible. I mean, if we lost Will Howard at the beginning of the year, who knows where we would be? Let's just call that what it is, too. Yeah. Very difficult to overcome that. But you know what North Carolina does have? They have probably best running back in college football from a statistical standpoint. Omari in Hampton is absolutely fantastic. He is probably the second best running back in the 2025 class behind Ashton Genty. I mean, he is that good. He's fantastic. He's got nearly 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. And this is with teams knowing that he is the only guy on this team that really you have to stop. And he's just been fantastic. So I'm going to go with him. And to me, it's just not close in that regard. So when you have the best player on the field and you're at home, I'm going to trust you, especially when I don't know much about these two teams otherwise. So give me North Carolina at home.
All right.
Okay. Final game here. I was looking at some stats, so having to back up real quick. Okay. So our final game, Cincinnati at – I don't expect them to be ranked after this. Currently, 17th ranked Iowa State. Cincinnati at Iowa State. Cincinnati is 5-4. Iowa State is 7-2. But keep in mind, Iowa State lost 2 games in a row. They're currently trending down. They have lost to Texas Tech at home, and at Kansas, they've lost pretty badly.
So I just want to make a point. I just noticed this. Not super relevant to this game, but Kansas did just beat Iowa State. Kansas is a favorite against BYU this week. A 3-point favorite. BYU is undefeated, and Kansas has 2 wins. Oh wait, no. They're not a favorite. They're not a favorite, but the line is only 3 points for BYU, and it's
That's wild. That's wild. That's something.
That's interesting.
I'm looking at that right now, actually.
Because I think some people have them as the favorite to win this game.
I do not understand that one.
I just thought that was interesting. But to go back to the pick, I think Iowa State's going to win this game. Don't really have a reason for it. I just think they're going to.
I don't really have a reason for that, but honestly, I mean, I agree too. I think it's a night game at home. I do think they bounce back in this game. I really do. Also, going back to what you were saying about Kansas, I think maybe they're finally starting to play up to that potential, even though they've only won 3 games. I mean, at the beginning of the year, they were preseason top 25. So clearly people thought enough about them. Also, Josh Heupel. So Josh Heupel coming out and saying that Nico is in concussion protocol after with an injury, dealing with an upper body injury as well. He's been optimistic about his availability for the Georgia game. There's a report that said he has been ruled out, but Heupel is not ruling him out yet. I'm still going with Georgia. I don't know if that changes yours, but I'm still going with Georgia because either way, I just don't think Georgia loses this game at home. I just don't. Just my personal opinion.
That's fair.
So that's where I'm at. All right. Well, man, anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Ban Big Ten games on big noon kickoff.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. Like I said, I feel like in the offseason we could have a really interesting discussion about all that.
I need to read more about the distribution of rights and how they're dispersing these games, because something seems a little fishy in the way that we're just getting snagged up for these big noon kickoff games every week, and it's kind of obvious what they're doing.
Yeah. No, for sure, man. Yeah, the whole thing's really frustrating. There's no doubt about that. Like I said, we will have your Ohio State versus Nebraska game day preview that will be available for you guys on Friday. Normally that's an afternoon drop. We'll kind of just see how things go. But yeah, I want to make sure you guys have that a day before so you guys can get that watched or listened to, whatever is better for you. We took a poll a while back and people said they'd rather have it the day before, so I want to do my best to get you guys that content the day before. But if you guys enjoy the show, please drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. Again, completely free to do both. Really shows the support for the show. Also, if you do listen on audio, we ask if you would take just a quick second again. It doesn't take long. Just go to your Apple Podcast or your Spotify app, whichever one you listen to. Drop a 5-star review. Again, you don't even have to put comments. You just click a 5-star. That helps push the show out on audio platforms to those that have not yet listened to the show. So again, just show that support. We really do appreciate it. We will talk to you guys all again soon. As always, go Buckeyes.
And Cal.